This is Talk is Sheep, the official podcast of the Wild Sheep Society of BC, brought to you by SITKA. Come along as we bring conversations that matter to you into the high alpine. This episode is sponsored by our conservation partner, Gunwerks. Thank you, SITKA Gear and Gunwerks, for investing in healthy wildlife and sustainable ecosystems.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're back on the mics with a seasoned professional here and fellow podcast host, good friend, Chuck Peeling. Welcome to the podcast, sir.
I don't know about seasoned, Kyle. I don't know if that's the right term or not. I don't have as many episodes under my belt, but everyone is a learning curve, I'm sure, for you too. And it never gets old, man. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks for being back. And I think it's pretty safe to call you seasoned. You know, we talk about if you go sheep hunting once, are you a sheep hunter? You're definitely a sheep hunter. It doesn't matter if you killed one or not. And so you did the first podcast and you were officially a podcast host, but you're definitely a seasoned podcast host and you're great at it too, Chuck. So anyway, you know, Spike Camp, many of our listeners know all about Spike Camp and the great messaging, great program that you guys have over there. We're going to dive in that today, but one thing I'm super keen on is hearing about your stone sheep hunt this year. So it's been an epic journey. It's been fun to listen to you, and you know, obviously a very seasoned hunter, very experienced guy, and been very patient on the sheep profile. And many sheep I know that you could have taken over the years, and you waited for a long time. So I'm really excited to jump into that story when. And hear as much as you're willing to share. I know you've shared it on your platform too, but I'd love to hear it from on ours. So,
oh, absolutely. I mean, as you know, I've been obsessed with sheep hunting for several years. And people say, "Oh, well, how many sheep hunts have you been on?" I always tell them I've been on one big sheep hunt. Like it's been a journey. So, I think I went on like the first trip. Yeah, it was 2019. So 2019 went on my first sheep hunt, didn't know what I was doing. Blake and I went on our hunt with a buddy, another young fella, and we saw some sheep. Didn't see anything close to legal on that one, but you know, the moment that I hit that alpine for the first time and saw my first stone sheep period, I was hooked. And yeah, it's been a journey. So I've been on 8 sheep hunts, including this one this year. Oh gosh. I kept notes. I always keep notes on my hunts every year on my phone, take the notes while I'm out and about, and come back and recap them. And it's 15 to 20 legal rams, I think, over the years that I passed on. I got obsessed with one ram in particular for 3 seasons. 2 years in a row we were on them, watching them grow. We were a little unsure the first year, very sure the second year. Went in the third year, and there was an outfitter with a whole crew up on that mountain scouring for that ram. It was a low density area, but it was a bit of a heartbreaker, and that was last year. And changed it up this year and went with my good buddy. I'm sure many people on here know him, Ed Thompson. If you're familiar with Instagram, Mountain Addictions is his handle on Instagram, and he's one of the goat gurus in BC. And Ed's a good friend, Spike Camp member, and we went into a spot that he's been hunting for a couple of years. So yeah, that's how we got here.
So Chuck, talk to me a little bit about, well, first of all, why the sheep obsession? I know you hunt a ton of stuff. You killed a goat a couple of years ago. You're very passionate about, obviously, elk and a whole bunch of other stuff, done tons of international hunting as well. But why sheep? You talked about an obsession there. What's it all about the sheep?
You know, it's interesting. I did not have an interest in sheep hunting as a young hunter. And it wasn't until probably 2000, I want to say 16 and 17, I met a gentleman named Kevin Willis. And you know Kevin well. He's got a history of sheep hunting in BC. He used to be, I think he was a board member with Wild Sheep for years and been involved in that space. And Kevin was running his riverboat transporting business on the Musquatashody, and I was elk hunting up there. And got to know him on the boat, and he asked me once on the boat, he said, "How come you don't sheep hunt? Are you interested in sheep hunting?" I said, I don't know. I mean, for me, in those days, it was all about meat hunting and filling the freezer. And obviously, a sheep, great meat, but I mean, you're not going to survive a winter on a sheep, right? So I wasn't really interested. And it was on one of the last elk hunts I did on the river. We were riding back, and Kevin said to me, he's like, I drove past your camp every day for 10 days, and I never saw you guys once. And I think on that particular hunt, we put over 100 mountain kilometers on our boots. And he said to me, he said, you should give sheep hunting a try. You are a sheep hunter. You just don't know it yet. And that kind of clicked. And I thought, I started to research a little bit more about sheep hunting that winter. And Blake and I decided, yeah, let's do it. So we did a fly-in hunt. And I mean, the fact that in stone sheep in particular, the fact that they're really only found in BC, a little bit in the Yukon, of course, but you can call them a BC only species of sheep. That intrigued me. And then once I started talking to sheep hunters, people that had experienced it before, I just really wanted to try it. And as soon as I did one, man, just seeing that first, I think it was a band of ewes that we saw, of course, first, and just seeing the color of them, where they were living, the country they were in, everything about them, I was like, man, this is it. So that's how it started.
Chuck, you talked about Blake, and for those that don't know, Blake's your son, and obviously a big part of Spike Camp, hunter as well. Is there a legacy of hunting in the family? Was your parents hunters, your grandparents, or is it sort of, you first generation?
No, there's definitely a legacy of hunting. I've been hunting since I was a little boy, growing up in Saskatchewan, and moved out here. And when my wife and I had kids, Blake's the middle one, so I have an older boy, Dallas, and a younger daughter, Steph, and they're all within a couple years of age of each other. I had those kids out hunting with me at a really young age too, and all three of them really like to hunt. Life, as you know, when you're going through your 20s and 30s, takes you in a lot of directions. And my oldest boy, he works for the same company as me and moved down to the States. He does a lot of international travel. So he's kind of steered away from hunting. He's now moved back to BC, and he's going to be kind of hitting the ground with us again next year once he's got his residency all back again. But Blake, in the middle, Blake was hooked on the first hunt. It was a mule deer hunt. Actually, sorry, it was a whitetail hunt in Saskatchewan. He shot his first buck with some family, and he's been just obsessed. And my daughter, she's in the BC CO service. She's actually coming elk hunting with me here for a few days next week. It's in the family. It's in our blood. We don't buy meat in grocery stores unless we absolutely have to.
That's awesome. Very cool. Now, Chuck, let's talk a little bit about, you talk about, getting the sheep bug and getting involved in that. And I'd like to hear a little bit about so Spike Camp is, and you talk about it's a community of hunters, and it's not necessarily mountain hunters, or it's not necessarily sheep hunters or goat hunters. It's not, but you do look at your logo and there is a sheep on there. And Spike Camp, you usually don't use a Spike Camp when you're whitetail hunting. You could, but you don't usually. So, there's obviously that mountain sort of flavor to it. But the one thing with wild sheep, we have a pretty, the Wild Sheep Society and other conservation orgs. There's a lot of them. There's Wild Sheep Foundation Alberta, a Yukon chapter as well. But we don't see these chapters of mule deer or elk hunters in Canada per se. Now there are rod and gun clubs and fish and game clubs and stuff like that. It's interesting. We've kind of built a community around mountain hunting and sheep hunting in the Wild Sheep Society, or the sheep hunting community. Just talk about, sort of what this community is. And Spike Camp is sort of, I think a lot of it's online centric, but it goes beyond that. Obviously, you guys go to events and you're trying to create this family, this community feeling. Let's just talk about sort of this community that we've kind of built here. Did you ever listen to that podcast that we did with Omer a few weeks back? With he was on Talk of Sheep, and it was we talked about our conservation community. Did you get a chance to listen?
Yes.
To that one?
Yes.
Yeah. So that I think we have something pretty special here in BC, and I don't. it's not a Wild Sheep Society BC thing. It's much bigger than that. Like there's spike camps in that, and so many others too, right? But I'd like to just, you had this vision of spike camp. You and Blake created this cool community, this conservation community. And it has a message that I automatically, you called me up and told me the concept. I'm like, we're in. Like,
yeah, for sure.
I needed all of half a second to think about it, but maybe just touch a little bit on this community of hunters we've created, and this community we've created here in BC, Western Canada, whatever you want to call it.
Sure. Yeah. So if you go back, back to what was the year where we had the unfortunate amount of short sheep shot? What was that?
I think it was 2020 was the bad one. It was 20 or 21. Yeah, maybe 21. Yeah.
Well, if you recall, Kyle, I think so. Most people know, if they know us, they kind of know the story behind Blake. But Blake is in the digital marketing space, that tech sector of web design and digital marketing and all that, right? And him and I were coming back from an unsuccessful, in terms of no tags filled, sheep hunt, but a very successful sheep hunt as far as our growth and learning. And this was a later season hunt. It wasn't opener. I think we were mid-September. I think we were driving back, and we pulled up one of your podcast episodes. I think it was, I can't remember who was on, but there was some discussion about how many sheep had already been taken that were short. And that got us pretty worked up. It really got Blake worked up. And, we at that time, I think we had passed on at least one or two rams that were probably legal, but more also probably only 6 or 7. And Blake he was upset that, the hunting community was undereducated in his opinion and making poor decisions. And, people can blame anything they want for making those decisions. It could be the pressure of social media, the gram, the grip and grins, the status in your community, any of those things. But at the end of the day, if you shot a short sheep, you click the safety off, you put the crosshairs on that animal, and you squeeze the trigger. So you're responsible. So in his opinion, in my opinion too, he said, we got to do something about it. And if you remember, he got back and we called you right away and said, Blake wants to put together a resource, just put all the resources that we can find together on a web page. And he created a quick website. I think it was Aging Sheep or something like that. And that was sort of the thing that set us, it's kind of set the hook that we should get involved. And we realized, that there was a lot of things happening in the hunting space. It was a couple of years before that we'd lost the grizzly bear hunt here in BC. And when that happened, we had people scrambling in all kinds of directions, like Wild Sheep Society was promoting, involvement and engagement to try to get in front of it. But other groups, all the stakeholders were all going in different directions. We weren't really joined and pulling the rope the same direction. And the other thing that was out there was a real toxic environment when it came to like forums and Facebook groups and things like that in the hunting space. There's platforms out there where you just couldn't make a post without somebody making a derogatory or insulting or racist comment, things like that. And all of those things combined, we said as we were driving back from a 20-hour drive, we as hunters can be better, and we just need to try to find a way to put everybody on the same page. And that started the discussion. We just started thinking about it. I think I went to the last Kamloops show that you guys were at. We kind of decided that we were gonna start Spike Camp, and I spent a lot of time at that show talking to sheep hunters and people involved in British Columbia conservation and wild sheep conservation, and we really realized there is a place for this, and there is a community of people. As you know, sheep hunters are generally pretty tight-lipped. They don't like to talk a lot about their hunts. They don't like to talk a lot about, the wheres and the hows and the tactics, but they're still very concerned about the resource being wild sheep and other wildlife on the landscape. So that was kind of how we started it. And it's been an amazing journey for us. We have a fantastic community, and it really is a community. People stick together. People are helping. We've got posts this year of new sheep hunters that have been given advice and mentorship from old sheep hunters These guys are posting their rams this year, pictures of them, successful stories. So that kind of thing is what we're all about. It really is a community, and our members are we encourage our members to support conservation. Our motto is hunter conservation. Those two words should be in the same sentence whenever possible. And that's kind of our MO.
Very cool. So there was a lot to unpack there. And one thing I'm curious about is you talked lots about the horn aging education, and that was kind of your, I guess, your gateway to Spike Camp. You know, in BC, for our listeners that aren't familiar, on the thin horn sheep, you've got two methods to determine if it's legal: if it's past the bridge of the nose, if the curl goes beyond the bridge of the nose when looked at perpendicularly, or the other one is if it's aged at 8 years or older, so considered mature. So, Chuck, you said that there were several rams you've seen over the number of years. I think you said dozen or 14 was the number,
something like
where
that, yeah.
they were legal. So they were maybe past the nose, or maybe 7, but and of course government wants us to, if we can, harvest a mature ram, and that's the society's position, and I know Spike Camp and many others too. So so you passed on these rams, and of course you're highly educated. You have guys on your podcast talking about horn aging, like, you know, a lot. Like, you doing these podcasts, you get all kinds of perspectives. You learn lots of tips and tricks. So, you know, you're very well educated. You could have easily gone out and harvested a ram that was legal, even though that wasn't the one you wanted. So talk a little bit about your mentality, your mindset on passing these rams, and why you chose to hold out, and then kind of that feeling when you decided this is the ram for me. Just like to hear that mental mindset, because I know like Bill Jex has done many podcasts, and lots of his horn aging stuff is like, hey, for your first one, just make sure it's legal, make sure it's legal, make sure it's legal. That's all we really care about. But then maybe you should be a bit more selective. And but you were just selective right from the start. You're never like, no, this isn't about filling out, like, ticking the box. I want that one ram that's special to me. So let's hear a little bit about your perspective on that journey for you.
Sure. So first of all, if a hunter shoots a legal ram as his first ram, his or hers, regardless of how old that hunter is in BC, I'm the first one to stick my hand out and shake their hand and congratulate them. So when it came to Chuck Peeling's choice on a ram, it's a little bit different. So I'll give you some context. My first sheep hunt, I was 51 years old. And when I was looking at my goals to try and harvest a sheep, I wasn't trying to harvest the first legal one. In my mind, then and now, I'm in a place where I would probably only ever shoot one stone sheep. And so for me, it had to be a very special ram. It had to be the one. And I've said that all along. I've passed on rams. And again, yeah, legal. Sure, I could have shot a 7-year-old that broke the nose by 1/2 inch. But for me personally, I looked at that and went, that's not the decision that I want to make. Now, if my son or any new hunter, or any hunter for that matter that I'm hunting with, that wants to shoot a ram that's legal by curl, maybe not necessarily by age, if you're looking at it from that perspective, that's their choice, and it's legal, and I have no problem with it. But from my perspective, also, you know, as one of the faces of Spike Camp, and you know, someone who's very involved with wild sheep conservation in BC, I just felt it wouldn't be a decision I would want to live with, to shoot something that was just legal. And I was prepared to not shoot a ram if that meant, you know, I go on 3 or 4 or 5 more hunts and then, you know, hang it up because my knees can't do it anymore, and I didn't have a sheep on the wall. I was totally fine with it. So that was my perspective. Shoot an 8-year-old. Great. Shoot a full curl ram. Great. It's your choice. It's the law. But again, I'm with Bill and guys like Mike Bridger and many of the people at the Wild Sheep Society. If you've shot a ram and it's legal, try and pursue something a little more mature. It just helps the population and helps all of us.
That's awesome. So I know Blake's been part of this journey as well, and he's been on a number of sheep hunts with you. And I know he's newly married, and there's a lot of moving parts to it when you're, you know, your stage in life and Blake's stage in life are two different places, and I can relate. I got two sons in the same sort of scenario too. What does his journey look like? Is he going to be able to get out? Is he going to do some hunting this fall, or does he have any plans? And I'd like to hear his perspective now that you brought home a sheep and how he feels about it.
Yeah, we need to get him on for sure. He is a very busy boy. He's got lots going on in his life, and full-time job, business on the side, spike camp, beautiful wife, the whole everything you could imagine with somebody who's 30, right? And he could not make this trip. And actually, it wasn't any of those things that held him back. My entire family, so all of my kids and my nephews and sister-in-law, mother-in-law, they did a family trip to Ireland that coincided with sheep opener. And of course, they asked me, would you like to come along with all of us for 10 days in Ireland? I'm not going to swear on the show, but my answer was F no. I have a flight booked with my buddy Ed. This is perfect. That means I have no commitments at home. You guys are going to be in Ireland. So he chose to go on a really nice vacation, a family vacation with his 84-year-old grandmother, because we don't know how many more of those are going to get. Now, he's a busy boy. He pulled a couple of LEH tags this year. So he's got a goat hunt, and our buddy Ed is going to take us on a goat hunt and try and get Blake his first mountain goat. And he pulled a moose draw, a really nice moose draw. And he's got his own personal obsession that's, I don't want to say it's up the priority list higher than sheep, but he's obsessed with blacktail. So he's out there this year. He's got lots of blacktail plans. He's going on a alpine mule deer hunt with a buddy here right away, early season. But next year he is coming sheep hunting. He is going to come with us, and I'm the official Glacier and packer, and I'm going to try and get him and Ed, try and get 2 rams with those guys and pack meat for him. So.
That's awesome. You talked a little bit about goals and setting goals for yourself and when you're hunting. So you've ticked your box. You've been kicked out of your less than one club. And you talked about packing next year, right? So what does that look like long term for you? Do you have any other sort of sheep hunting goals? Obviously getting Blake one is clearly part of your plan there, but how important it is to you to be out there, to get another sheep, maybe to mentor someone. Sort of where do you go from here now that you've achieved your goal of getting the ram that you were after?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kyle. And you know what? I guess there's 2 ways to answer it. For me, I don't care if I ever shoot another one. I do want to pursue other species of sheep, and I'm going to see how that looks. I don't have a definitive plan. The budget for some of those sheep is pretty high, and that's going to require some approvals and sacrifices from myself and approval from my wife if I go down that road, or lucky on LEH. But we're gonna take a look at that. But for the immediate future for sheep hunting, yeah, I wanna try and help others, in particular Blake. I want to see him experience what I just experienced, as far as that, harvest and taking a nice ram. And Ed's been just a great buddy, and he took a ram when he was younger, a full curl legal ram, but in his words, it wasn't. If he had that choice today, he would rather wait and hold out for an older ram. So he's looking for the one, like I was. So both those guys are like my priority. I want to make sure both of those guys kind of reach their dream for sheep hunting. And then just if I can, as long as my knees will take me up the mountain, I'm going to keep doing it for as many years as I can.
I think that's the thing with sheep hunting is if you stay in reasonably good shape, you can do that, right? And one thing that I found, and with the early sheep hunting that I did, put a lot of miles on, and I feel like now you maybe don't need, like if you're in sheep country, you just need to get eyes on glass. You sort of evolve as a hunter, and you've seen it yourself. You started doing this in 17. You've had, like you said, a dozen sheep hunts under your belt now. Probably your strategies from 8 years ago to where you are today, they've evolved during time. And there was a story I've heard. I think BC Yukon one of the guys used to tell the pilot, I think it was Bruce, would say that he'd fly a guy in October. It was right before, like 10 days left in the season. He'd drop him off and he'd just sit there and he'd wait for snow. And those rams would just come down and he would harvest one just off the lake every year. And he was in his 80s when he was doing it. So I think if you're willing to adapt and hunt smarter, not harder, you're probably going to have some limited success too, right? At the very least, you're still out there.
Oh yeah, for sure. And we took a very calculated approach this year, hunting with Ed. Again, we've talked about it on some of our shows on our sheep camp series about finding the right partners, right? The right sheep hunting partner or partners. And Blake's always been kind of my number one sheep hunting partner, and started hunting with Ed last year, and we get along really well. And this year, going into this hunt, we had a very calculated plan as to, how many days we were going to be there. It was a fly-in trip, so we fly in. We knew where we wanted to camp. Ed had been in there a couple times and knows the area well, but he also, like you said, sheep country is big, and you can cover ground all you want, but these things can be anywhere. Sheep are where you find them. That's the line, right? So we had a very calculated approach, and yeah, the work was on the front end, getting into sheep country, and then we slowed things down, and we spent a couple days at each camp spot that we wanted to work, watched, sat and glassed, 2, 3, 4 feeding cycles, took inventory of what was in the area, then moved to the next spot that we wanted to try. And that's basically how we did it. And again, it wasn't a lot of hard work once you were there, but getting there was. And I mean, there's so many challenges, right? The heat, the weather, the bugs, the rain, the storms. Like, you still have to get through all that. But yeah. So as long as I can hobble up a mountain, I'm going to keep doing it.
So on that note, are you an early season guy or late season guy?
We talked about this quite a bit. So Ed and I think we're any season guys, but we get so damn excited when we hear openers coming. We want to be the first guys up there. So that might change. That might change over time, but we like opener. I think it's, I just don't know if I could sit back and watch social media and watch Spike Camp for the first 3 weeks of sheep season. I think it would drive me crazy.
So when you seen your ram, when you spot him, were you like, okay, no, that's the one, like that, we got to kill that ram? Or like what, talk me through that sort of spotting that ram for the first time, what that experience was like. Can you talk me through the hunt or share as much as you're willing to? I'd love to hear.
Absolutely. So, so it was an opener hunt. We flew in, and of course, like I said, Ed knew where he wanted to go. I had helped him a little bit with some reconnaissance and some intel on that spot a couple years ago, so I was pretty familiar with it as well. I'd never hunted it, but we were on the same page where we wanted to go. So we fly in, got to the first glassing camp on day 2. Started to see some sheep, took inventory. It was pretty quiet. We just started selectively moving around into a couple different areas. Made a camp. I think the longest we stayed in one camp was 3 days, I think, and we had one weather day. But during the first 6 days, 7 days of the hunt, we saw a few rams, quite a few, probably four for sure that were young rams that broke the nose. Maybe one side would break the nose by a half inch, or both horns would tip over. But a lot of nice sheep, really good young rams. Glimpses of a couple of mature, good rams, but quite a ways off in different country. We did run into some other hunters that were in a spot where we kind of wanted to get over to, so we decided, well, there's a whole section of new country that we want to try, and that Ed kind of wanted to try for a couple years. So we worked our way over. I think it was, I want to say day 8. We work our way up this one valley, and we get camped at the end of the drainage. And it was about, I think it was 2:00 in the afternoon. We'd set up our tents, and we just nicely get set up. And I don't know if you do this or not, Kyle, but we both pack those light chairs. I have one of those little Helinox chairs. It's going on every single hunt I go on now, man. It was just money. So anyway,
100%.
we're sitting in this. We're camped at a pretty open spot. Of course, there's no trees, and we could see kind of three directions up, three different drainages, sort of two drainages and then a big bowl. And I sit down with my lunch at 2:00. I sit in my chair and I open up my lunch bag, pulled out something to eat, and I just looked across the valley, and I could see something sitting on this ridge on a finger at the base of this mountain. And I pulled up my binos, and I got a mouthful of granola bar or whatever, and I pull up my binos, and this sheep is staring right through me. And the first thing I see is his right horn is way over his nose. And he's just staring, chewing his cud. You know that feeling when you look up and they are looking, like I said, right through you. And I've said all along, people have heard me say this, and you have to. When I see the one, I'll know. Well, I saw this sheep. And again, he's sitting at 1,600, 1,700 yards away, staring at me. And I dove out of my chair, and I yelled to Ed. I said, holy fuck. He's right there. He's 3 inches over the nose. And Ed's eating himself. And he's like, where? And I hit the deck. I don't know why I was concerned. The sheep knew I was there. I'm way over a kilometer away. But Ed pulls up his binos and he finds it and he's like, oh yeah, there he is. That's the one. So here's the dilemma. We're in the middle of this open valley, and there's no way to cover ground. There's no way. We had no physical way that we could get to this sheep at that particular time. We thought about every scenario. We thought about climbing the mountain behind us, working our way all the way around this drainage, figured it would take us way too long. And we also, this is where Ed came in, as a very experienced guy, has been on like 18 or 19 sheep hunts. He said, let's just slow this down. Like this ram, we know he's here. He's not going to go too far. Let's watch him. So we sat there in our chairs all day. Actually, we were laying on the ground for quite a while. I don't know why, but we were trying to hide, but we had 2 tents right in the middle of nowhere. While we watched this ram, he got up finally after about 3 hours and sort of fed across the face of the mountain away from us, and then worked his way up and out of our lives. He went over the top of a little mountain, up over a bowl at the top of this mountain, right at last light. So we sat there watching him, and then about 5 minutes after he disappeared, it's kind of hard to describe, but there was a pass just below where he had disappeared and another mountain face maybe 500 yards from him. Well, as we were watching the light fade, we saw about a dozen rams come walking around that face on that other mountain and then up into the cliffs and bed. And now this is probably 2 or 3, probably 3.5 kilometers from us. So we're watching this through our spotters at last light. And we kind of looked at each other and went, well, he's either going to be up on the mountain that he's on, or he's going to join up with those sheep, because he can see him where he was from, but we couldn't see him. So we went to bed. I didn't sleep at all, like not at all. I was like freaking out. The ram of my dreams is gone. He's out of my life. Someone's going to shoot him tomorrow, all those thoughts, right? Well, we got out of the tents at 3. I was well awake before that. We get out of the tents at 3:00 and have a coffee and get organized. And as soon as it got barely light enough to kind of glass our area where we had seen him, we spent a while glassing and decided, well, we're going to go pursue him and see if we can find him. So we went up that pass where we thought he may have crossed and joined. And sure enough, right, it's sort of, there's really only one way across it. We get to the trail going up through this saddle, and Ed stops and looks down. And there's a fresh pile of sheep shit right on the trail. Like literally, you could see where it looked like a sheep had come down the mountain from where he was, left some sign on the trail and then went up. So I was like, okay, he's probably with them. So we spent the morning kind of sneaking around. We found that other band of rams, did a head count, and he wasn't there. we're like, oh shit, there was a couple good rams in there that weren't going to make it for this year, but who knows, maybe next year if they're still around, there might be something nice there. So we watched those sheep for a while. Then we did a big loop around behind where we had camped a couple days before. Long story short, we put on probably 10 or 12 kilometers that morning trying to find this sheep, checking off all the boxes. And then we did a big circle and came back and said, okay, well, let's go back to our camp. We'll stop along the way and we'll glass the bowl that we were camped in. And it's a big bowl, big, huge basin with sort of two directions that you could go once you got up to our tent. Big, wide open country. Well, sure enough, we find this little spot. We drop our packs. It's 2:00 in the afternoon again, 24 hours later from when we saw him the first time. I sit down. Ed's pointing one direction. I'm pointing towards the bowl where our tents and stuff are. I pull out my lunch a second time, and I look, and I'm like, what the hell? Pulled up my binos, and there he is. He's on a knob about 250, 300 yards from where I saw him the first time yesterday, the day before. He kind of did a circle or something and went right back. This time, he doesn't see us. So we sat there for, oh gosh, I'd have to ask Ed how long, but a good hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. And then finally I said, let's see if we can do a stalk on him. And what we had to do was kind of drop back down to some lower country, sneak up a creek, and then side hill across a bunch of rock slides. We had to go up the side of this sharp mountain, and it's all shale and rock, like just the shittiest stuff, as you know, that they're never in a good spot, right? So we worked our way across all of these different rock slides. It took a long time, and finally we got to the last possible one that we could get to without being busted, and it was about 370 yards, and we belly crawl up through these rocks, and I peek over the edge, and there he is up on up on this little grassy, little ridge, little shelf, and he's asleep. So Ed's behind me, and he gets the spotting scope out with the phone scope on it and starts taking some video and confirming that it was him. And we watched him for a good hour, maybe even longer now. I can't remember. And eventually he stood up finally and kind of walked off this little bank. Ed captured everything on video, so I have pretty much everything on video. And finally presented a shot. I was actually shooting the Alpine Riflecraft rifle, the first one off the production line from Mike Drury, Alpine Riflecraft. Little plug for him, chambered in .284 Winchester. So it was the first one off the production line. I spent all spring and summer working with that rifle, doing some load development. I had almost 300 rounds through it by the time I got to the sheep hunt. And fired the first shot, and I hit him. He was broadside, but I hit him a little bit high, right behind the shoulder, but sort of below the backstrap. There's that little void where you're above the lungs, but you're below the spine. So it kind of just chipped the bottom of what would be the vertebrae in the backstrap. So hit him hard, but he spun around and ran about 10, 15 feet and then stood broadside again. And when I had fired the shot, I was laying in a real precarious position. So I was on my stomach on about a 45-degree angle. I had to dig toe holds in the ground to keep my feet steady so I didn't slide down this rock slide. I had to lay like that for over an hour. And I was shooting off a bipod. But when I fired the first shot, the muzzle brake just erupted all this dust. So I lost the sight picture. So Ed's behind me going, you hit him a little high. He's right below. He's turning around. And then all of a sudden I saw him, and I gave him another shot. And then he disappeared out of my sight again. Saw him for a second. I gave him a third shot that completely missed. And then Ed's like, no, you got him. He's tumbling down the rocks. So that was how that went down. So you know that feeling, Kyle, because you've got that beautiful sheep sitting over your shoulder. When that moment happens and you realize it's finally done, it's like a floodgate of adrenaline dump and emotions, right? So yeah, that was the stock, and ironic too. Like so many things to unpack as you know there, but like Ed said, this one was meant to be because you saw him the first time and you saw him the second time. So yeah.
That's crazy. When you were so on the day you killed him and you seen him, you were down below him and you seen him. What range was he at that point when you seen him on that knob?
Oh, 1,000 yards.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
right
So
on.
first time he was 1,300, no, 1,600, I think. Yeah, 1,600. He was 1,000 or 1,100 on the second day, but it was like the stock was brutal to get over there. Like the side hill was just sketchy as shit too.
Yeah. So there's that moment when you sort of crawl up and you're sneaking over and you peek out and you look and you see him there. Talk me like what's going on in your brain when you see that ram there. You're like you're in range. He's there. He doesn't know you're there. And now this is like the moment. Like just what are you thinking? Where are you at? Like and what are you doing to calm yourself? Because like you talk about buck fever, like
Mhm.
think about seeing that 200-inch whitetail you've hunted 7 years for and you've never seen him and now he's presented himself like it's like if there's buck fever that's it right there. So talk about how you maintained your composure and everything to get the job done.
It's weird. This is funny because we talk about this a lot, and I always say to people, if somebody tells you they don't have buck fever in a situation or have never had it, they're full of shit. We all get it. I don't care who you are. I don't care how experienced you are. At some point in your hunting career, your nerves, your heart rate, and your adrenaline are going to take over your mind, and you're going to get the shakes. You're going to have self-doubt. You're going to freak out, right? Like it happens to all of us. This one was really, really weird. I have not experienced this before, but ever. And I think part of it is the fact that this journey took me so long and so many miles and so many opportunities that when I finally got set up with my rifle and pulled my rifle up and looked through the scope at this ram, the thing that crossed my mind first was this is going to happen. This is going to freaking happen. This sheep has no idea I'm here. Even if I miss the first two shots, he can't go anywhere. He's got to come down, or I'll know where he went. And for the first time in my hunting career, it felt to me like it's over. And then things just slowed down. I didn't get the buck fever on this occasion, and I've had it a lot. I've had it on lots of animals, but I didn't get that. Things actually just slowed right down. And, Ed was, my partner. I credit him. He was behind me the whole time. He's such a calm and stoic guy. I don't know if you've spent much time chatting with Ed Thompson, but, anybody that knows him knows he's just the chillest dude out there. Great guy to have on a hunt like this. He was my left brain for the whole trip. We'd be looking at rams. I'd get excited. Oh, I think he's good, Ed. And then we'd look and it'd be quiet for 15 minutes. And then he'd say, what do you think, Chuck? I'd be, nah, he's 7. Like that's how we went all week like this. But he's talking to me, he's like, what do you got for a dial up there? And I'm like, well, I got, 5 minutes or whatever, so he calmed me right down. But yeah, I didn't get buck fever at this point. Now, when the lead started flying and when he said I hit him high and I pulled up and looked and got him in my scope picture again, I could see the blood. I knew he was going to die, but Ed and I both share a lot of the same philosophies. And one of those is if that animal's standing, you just keep shooting. Like, it doesn't matter. We don't want this. It's not that we're worried about him getting away. I don't like animals to die a slow, misery-based death. They've got to go down quick. And I like to kill things with one shot. I spend a lot of time behind a rifle. I spend a lot of time precision reloading and hand loading all my own ammunition. And honestly, that was all I was worried about, was like, what kind of death is this poor animal going to get? And yeah, so no buck fever, but the adrenaline dump certainly happened, especially when I walked up to him. Then it did.
Talk a little bit about when he went down. So he starts tumbling. You're getting ready for another shot, And Ed's like, no, he's down. He's tumbling. What's going through your brain then? Like, you're like, okay, this guy, it's done now. Like, when they start tumbling down the mountain, it's all over. It's just a matter of recovery now. So where's your brain at that point? And so Ed tells you he's down or he's tumbling. What's your first word out of your mouth?
Well, so Ed's words were, oh, he's going down, he's tumbling. And I pull up and I look, and the way this mountain is, like, we're side hilling and shooting on an upward angle, right, at 370 yards. So there's 3 or 4 more rock slides, drainages in between us. And so once he did his first tumble, he's out of sight. We can't see him anymore. Like, we didn't see him fall. We just knew the rock bench he was sitting on and where he fell from. And so I turned around, and of course I didn't see him tumble because I was eating a mouthful of dust again from shooting this rifle on a rock pile. And I looked around and I said, Ed, is he dead? And Ed starts laughing. He's like, yeah, he's fucking dead. He's tumbling down the mountain. And I jumped up, and then we, of course, then that's when the emotions hit, and the hug and the congratulations and the laughs and all that. And then we stop and we're like, okay, how do we get to him? Because we had 2 choices. We could go back down the mountain, and this is steep, nasty stuff. Rock slides, like, I didn't realize how long it was going to take us, but we decided let's just side hill straight at him and then work our way down so we don't lose elevation. Like, in hindsight, that was a dumb move. We should have just went down to the valley floor and walked up. But it took us probably an hour and 15 minutes to get 300 yards over these rock slides. Like, we were up and down, trekking pole hell through these, boulder fields and rock slides. And then we get to the one where we thought he went down, because, it changes as you get closer. And we look, and there's no sheep in this one. I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Ed's like, he's dead, man. He's there. Like, just relax. And of course, my mind's racing. And then we pop over the next one. And yeah, it was probably, I don't know, we didn't measure it, but I would say 300 or 400 feet of just bouncing on rocks all the way down. And it was a nasty, bloody mess at the bottom, but nothing got broken. But yeah. So then we work our way over to him.
So there's that moment where you're walking up to him. So now, keeping in mind, you just spent the last hour and change getting to him after the adrenaline of killing him, and you're walking over there. I've walked up to some rams that are, you knew they were legal, you'd done your homework, but until you get your hands on them, they're just like, there's just something in your brain that just, like, you just got to look, and you got to count the rings or see that he's like, there's just something like it. I can't explain it, and until you do it, there's just like that. Like, I don't care if he's 6 inches past the nose, you just walk up to him and you just got to see it. It's just, I don't know what it is, but what was your dialogue like with Ed as you guys walked up to it, and sort of when you put your hands, that first time you reached down, you touched those horns, what was that like?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because so one thing about Ed too that I absolutely love, this guy loves his phone and loves his camera. So he's got a lot of, like, footage. We could do a complete, like, film for YouTube if we chose to. What we are going to do is we're going to do a live stream on Spike Camp, and I'll share photos and videos there. I'm probably not going to make a movie out of this because it's not that great it's not film quality, but there's some really good moments that he captured on his phone. And one of them was me walking up and grabbing those horns. And then that sort of a story, the story dump, if you will, like, tell us what just happened. And I remember we were a little bit above, kind of, as far as altitude, we were, 50, 60 feet above the ram when we found him. So we're coming down, and I'm looking, and all I see is blood all over this poor sheep, because he had two big holes in him, and he tumbled down the rock. And I'm like, ooh, that's not exactly photo friendly, but he's dead. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I can only see his left side. And I'm thinking, oh my God, the right side is the one that's full curl perfectly. Like, it's a wrap right around. You've seen the photos. And I'm thinking, oh, please don't be broken off. Please don't be broken off. And then I walk up, and Ed's got me on film walking up and grabbing it. And we both just are like, holy shit. This is, ground shrinkage. It always seems to be what everybody says in that nervous moment when you grab your sheep. there was no nervous moment of him being legal or not. It was more of like the shock of how nice the sheep was. That's what hit us. And so I grabbed his horns and I still had my pack and everything on. And this is when the emotion dump happened, like the big one. And, I just sat down and Ed captured everything on film there. He videoed me. I like to, it's just something I do. I usually have a thank you for the animal, for giving its life. That's something I've always done. If possible, I'll say it out loud. Sometimes it's just inside, but this time I felt, I got to say something to this sheep. So Ed's kind of captured me having a little conversation with the sheep, thanking it. And then he asked me to recap, the stock and stuff. So we got that on video. So it's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Super cool. So you go through all the pictures, you get everything caped out and get back to your camp. Sort of what's your mindset now? Like you're back in camp and like, are you, I know with me, like I'm always like looking at like photos like in the field and just like almost reliving it, like laying in bed at night, like you're like, it's pitch black out. You're exhausted, but you just can't, your brain just like, oh, I got to see those pictures again. Like, and I don't know, there's something. And then did you get to eat sheep meat on the campfire? Did you do that?
Yeah. So that, by the time we got back to camp, it was almost dark, and where we were camped, there was no chance of a fire at all. And honestly, we got back to camp with the meat. We cached the meat on some rocks about 150 yards from camp, where we could see it from our tents, right down by a creek. So we cached the meat there, and then, like I said to Ed, I said, well, the head and the cape are going to be right up beside my tent. Like I'm not, I do that when every guide always tells the same story about the foolish hunter that wants to sleep with his horns. That's me. So anyway, we bring it up. It was still a little bit of light left when we got back to camp, and we kind of stretched out. We washed the cape in the creek and made sure we got all the blood out of it, and got back to our camp, made some dinner, and just sort of stretched it out on a big rock right behind our tents, and relived the moment. And then we had an honest conversation about what's our goals now, because the weather was still hot. We knew of some other buddies of ours that were sharing a plane potentially with us that had 2 rams. We had another good friend of ours, not terribly far from us on a completely different lake, but they had 2 rams, and they'd had one for 5 or 6 days, cached in snow, and we knew those guys were trying to get out the next 2 days. So after packing that ram off the mountain, Ed and I both decided the days of double headers for Ed and I are probably behind us. He packed his first ram out by himself, and I mean, they're freaking heavy. There's a lot there, and you got your camp. We decided, okay, let's get up bright and early. We can make it back to the lake. It's going to be a big push. We'll get back tomorrow night. We'll have a fire at the lake. And so that's what we did. We got up early the next morning, before it got too hot, packed everything up. And I think it was about a 10.5 hour pack out down. On foot, it was about 30 kilometers as our track. When you if you run a track on iHunter or Onyx, you get your actual footprints, distance or whatever. So it was about a 30K hike. We got down to the lake around, it was like 8 o'clock, something like that. Ditched the packs, had a chat with the pilot on the inReach, found out we're going to get picked up the next day. We literally just jumped in the lake, cooled off. Then I got to work probably around 10 o'clock at night with the headlamp. There, a really nice big tree had fallen over, like driftwood tree right on the lake, right on the beach. We put our tents on the beach. I was able to stretch the cape and head out right on this log and then sit on the log and cape out the face. So I was doing that. And meanwhile, Ed stoked up a fire right behind me and grabbed some willow sticks. And we cut up the tenderloin, used some of our salt that we had for the cape, seasoned up the meat. And quite literally, he would stick the willow sticks in the sand, right beside me when I was caping. So I had these skewers just hanging right by my face. I was just picking the meat off. And then there's one special thing I need to tell you that occurred on this hunt too, and it was right at the end. As you know, we lost a very prolific sheep hunter about 2 months ago or a month and a half ago in Shane Pallister passing away, and you had him on Talk of Sheep here, and I've had him on Spike Camp. I didn't know Shane very well at all until about 3 years ago, and kind of connected with him, and I had him on the show once. And for the last year or so, when Shane was going through his battle, I became pretty good friends with him. And it wasn't that I was, I say this now and it sounds a little selfish, but I wasn't like pursuing a friendship with Shane as much as it just happened. And he just became one of those guys. Like he would just randomly reach out and just check in to see how I was doing. And he loved what we do at Spike Camp and was all for it, was a big supporter. And as his battle started to intensify, I stayed in touch with him a lot, and tried to communicate with him on a weekly basis. And my last conversation with Shane a few weeks before he passed away, he said to me, he goes, "Brother, this is your year. Like, it's happening. He knew the story intimately on a ram that I was chasing for 3 years. And he knew all about that. And he said to me, he goes, you're going to get him. This is your year. Just take your time. When you see the one, you're going to know." And that's why I keep referring to it as the one. So there was a moment, I thought about him a lot when I was packing this ram out, about what Shane had said to me. And when we were finished up our fire and our sheep meat down at the lake, we had this incredible sunset hitting the lake. And I said to Ed, I said, I want to get a photo of you. Take a picture of me. I want to say something to Shane. So he's got photos from behind me with the sunset across the lake, and I'm holding my sheep head up, and I'm actually thanking Shane for his support and saying goodbye. So it was a pretty epic moment. And I kind of felt like his spirit was riding around in my pack with me. I mean, it sounds a little flaky, but I just felt like he was with me there for a few times on the hunt, talking me out of, immature rams and waiting for the one. So
I'm sure he was, man. That's deep stuff. That's what a tribute, eh? Oh, that's amazing. Wow.
Yeah, it's a cool picture. I'll share it with you, and it's it's cool. And it's not like it's the first time I've seen a picture like that. To be honest, Ed had a picture of him holding his skull up when he got his very first ram. So I was like, let's do a picture like that, Ed. He's like, yeah, we'll say goodbye to Shane, man. I was like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Super cool. That's the one with you holding the ram above your head. Yeah. That's amazing.
In the moonlight. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So fitting. That sheep meat tastes pretty good when you're sitting by a campfire.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah. It's different, isn't it?
Yeah. And then when we got home, it was interesting too. So I think the first person outside of my family that I texted, because the inReach technology today is crazy, right? I've got one of those new Messenger Plus, inReach Messenger Plus, where you can send photos. And so I had texted my family there in Ireland, and of course Blake's freaking out. He wants to know every detail. It's 9 hours ahead, so give him the details. But the first person I texted outside of that was Mike. And, he's like congratulating me, and he's like, you got to stop in. And so it took us a while to get home, because throughout the journey at Spike Camp, the one thing that I'm most happy about with Spike Camp is the amount of friends that Blake and I have made through the community, like real true friendships with people. And, just the community itself, not just Spike Camp's community, but the hunting space in BC is different now, I think, because of Spike Camp and Wild Sheep Society BC. And people are more willing to share and help other people. And I think I had 5 stops on my way home. Like, people wanted to put their hands on my ram on the way back. And, it's incredible the amount of people that just love sheep hunting and get it, that understand what it's all about.
Yeah, well said. So let's talk a little bit about the platform. So now, people are familiar with it. Future plans. What do you like? Obviously, You guys just wrapped up sheep stakes, and that sounds like it was a phenomenally successful program. I'll just say this now is that from a conservation perspective and a conservation organization perspective, we're incredibly grateful for your messaging. You and Blake are always saying the right stuff. You're encouraging community. You're encouraging conservation. You're encouraging contribution. You guys are incredibly benevolent and always looking out and trying to find ways and innovative ways. And I don't see a lot of that. Like you guys you're not a not-for-profit. You're not a for-profit. You're just I don't even know what you are, but it's amazing. And it's a phenomenal program and love what you guys are doing. So what's kind of the vision for the short term? We're hoping you'll be back in Penticton at our show again this year. We sure loved having you there the last couple of years, and just love what you're doing, Chuck. So love to hear your thoughts on it.
Well, yeah, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about Spike Camp too, because it is obviously a super important part of my life, and I do like to share our vision. Honestly, the vision for Spike Camp has been a bit of a moving target. Just like any project that you embark on, you'll have what you think is your master plan, but things tend to change. And we started off really trying to support and partner with you guys, Wild Sheep Alberta, and the Goat Alliance were the three kind of founding groups that supported us by sending the message to your membership. As we grew through the first probably year and a half, at the time, my vision was, let's try to spread this throughout other chapters of the Wild Sheep Foundation, chapters and affiliates. And we did. As you know, we were at the summit last year in Calgary for all the chapters and affiliates, and I've made some tremendous friends, and we brought several chapters on. But one thing is sort of remained true throughout Spike Camp's journey, and that's we've really realized it's a Western Canadian platform, more so about Western Canadian mountain hunting and the community of people in Western Canada. Not to say that our American friends and some of the other chapters aren't involved, but I mean, we have most of the members of Spike Camp. I think I have to pull the actual numbers, but I want to say probably 75-80% of the members are British Columbia residents. And then the balance, the next in line is Alberta. And then it's a smattering of, Yukon and other Canadian provinces and the U.S. And with things going the way they have the last year, and I'm sure you're feeling it too, it's nice to attract some partnerships with American hunting companies and brands and equipment gear, clothing, all of that. It's been challenging to get these companies to support either financially in terms of buying advertising with us. What we found, though, is we have some amazing companies that want to support the movement that we have with Spike Camp. And again, it's not all about trying to make money. I just want the thing to sustain itself, and it does now. We have enough support from vendors that pay for advertising that I don't need to worry about it. And quite frankly, I fund it personally anyway. But what I've found is companies, especially in the last 12 to 18 months, there's not a lot of budget anymore from hunting companies to really spend, for advertising and stuff. However, they are willing to share their product. And what we have found is, okay, that's got a lot of value. If we can get gear in terms of partnerships in lieu of, say, advertising funds, I can do a lot with that gear. I can give it away. I can incentivize members. I can gamify the platform. I can make it fun. And that's what we've been doing is we have the monthly rewards program. Really good odds if you're a member of Spike Camp that you're going to win something someday. And all you got to do is participate on the platform. So our vision is to continue to grow that, to grow our member base with quality members that care about conservation, care about hunters' rights, care about the wildlife, and want to help each other. We don't have room for people to argue and fight and do a bunch of nasty stuff on the platform. And we're going to reward those people with gifts and prizes and contests and be creative about it. You mentioned sheep stakes. Sheep stakes was a promotion that we ran through July and August to celebrate wild sheep in Western Canada. And through a generous donation from our very good friend, our collective very good friend, Mr. Donnie Lynham, he gave us a rifle built by another good friend, Gary Flock, and he donated one of Bill Pastorik's books that's in one of those wood box special edition books. So Don gave me both of those, and he basically said, do something good with it, and just do your thing. So we decided, well, let's try and give back to wild sheep here in Western Canada. So for 2 months, we basically had this contest running where if you spend money at any of those 3 wild sheep organizations, BC, Alberta, Yukon, submit your receipt to us, and we give you, I can't remember exactly, I think it was a couple entries for every $1 that you submit a receipt for. You go into a pool of entries, and then if you didn't have or didn't want to spend money, you just get on the platform, and we have a gazillion ways you can get entries by engaging on the platform for posting, liking, sharing, all that stuff. And Blake did the tally up, and that donation of the rifle and book from Don, we came in just short of $18,000 in submitted receipts, just
Wow.
from that alone. So, there you go.
Well, I think it's super cool, Chuck, and hats off again to you guys over there and what you're doing. Because I get members that reach out to me, and like we see the benefit. I was an early adopter, as like when anyone that's got the passion and wants to do good things for conservation, like how can you say no? And I was like, yeah, I love the concept. And we've got a Monarch member that's done it twice now, maybe 3 times, and every year he calls up and he goes, "Here's my $5,000 donation," and he references you guys, right? So, is that a direct correlation? Probably. Certainly, it's influencing it, and he's not the only one. So, it just goes to show you that the program's working, and we're really, really, really grateful for it. It's awesome. So,
well, we've got, you mentioned the sheep show coming up for next year. Spike Camp will have a booth there. I'm going to give you a little teaser. I think I mentioned it to you, but we have a very special project coming. Details will follow, but Don Lynham, Ed Thompson, and myself are putting together a very, very cool rifle. Very unique. I'm not doing much of the work. Those 2 guys are doing most of it. But for those that know Ed Thompson, he's a very skilled woodworker and stock maker. We're going to have a very, very special rifle that we're going to use as a raffle item for you guys, from Spike Camp membership to Wild Sheep. And if all goes well, that thing will be ready to be drawn one of the nights of the banquets at the show. So we're hoping that one moves the needle as far as money goes, because it's going to be a kind of a once in a lifetime firearm.
It's so super cool. I can't wait. Yeah, it's great. Well, Chuck, thank you so much for our listeners. Anyone that's not a Spike Camp member, they need to sign up. It's an important community. The resources on there are phenomenal. The camaraderie ship, it's just a good platform. You feel good. You go to social media, you feel bad half the time. You go on there and you're like, I don't like where this is going, or the messaging, or there's a bunch of BS politics that is really just in the ditch. And that doesn't happen on your platform. It's a great place. It's an inclusive place. And the right kind of inclusive, not the weird kind of inclusive. It's just it's a good feeling. Just to get a little bit political there, but
sure.
It's an awesome space. So anyone listening, where do they need to go? How do they need to be? What's it going to cost them? How much is a membership, Chuck? It's exorbitant, but how much does it cost them?
Yeah, we're looking at a rate increase. We're going to go from 0 to 0, so it doesn't cost you anything. You just need our only ask, and as you know, this is a difficult one to enforce. So we work on a trust basis, but we ask all people that join up to be a member of something as terms of a conservation group. We've opened that up to rod and gun clubs, like you mentioned earlier, and a bunch of different groups. We're just trying to be a place for hunters/conservationists to hang out. So spikecamp.com. We're on social media. We're on Instagram. We have a pretty good following there. Starting to build a little bit of a YouTube channel. We're trying to do all of our live stream podcasts. You can find them on Spotify or Apple and even YouTube as well. But the platform itself, spikecamp.com, real easy.
Awesome, Chuck. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And I know you got a big season still in front of you. You've killed a giant ram. You're like basking in the glow, and yet you're going out chasing elk and a whole bunch of other stuff. So appreciate you, my friend. Keep up the great work. Thanks for doing everything you do. Hats off to your incredible son, too, and everyone over at Spike Camp. Thank you so much.
All right, Kyle. Thank you very much for having me on again. We love you guys.